Hello everyone, I hope you're all staying safe at this time. My name is Christopher Marion and I'm a CAM specialist for SolidCAD here in Canada. So SolidCAD is an Autodesk Platinum partner that can assist you with any of your Autodesk software needs. Today we are going to look at a product that resides on the advanced manufacturing side, PowerMill. So PowerMill is Autodesk's premier CAM solution which gives its users full toolpath control, editing power, stock management tools, outstanding 5-axis functionality, and customization. So I've been encountered many times over my visits with customers on how exactly PowerMill modeling works with both PowerMill Premium and Ultimate. So I thought this might be a great time to showcase what PowerMill modeling is and give you a few examples on how it can assist you with your general workflow. Having a modeling function beside your CAM system frees up the designer's time instead of dealing with really simple model fixes. So today we'll take a look at creating cap surfaces, surface extensions, fixing bad surface edges, and a few inspection tools. So with that, let's get started and take a look. Let's go ahead and start looking at this first toolpath here that finishes the clearance section on my mold. I'm pretty happy with it, except the fact that the tool keeps dipping into the bottom portion here or in the inside of the slot. So it's something that I can control perhaps with a boundary by modifying the boundary. I could also select the segments manually and go into the edit tab and delete those segments. I could also perhaps trim some of those segments away using the limit function. But in this example, we're going to go ahead and create some nice surfaces over top of those gaps to let the tool kind of flow nicely over top. We also have an area in the bottom of this radius where surface was omitted during translation. So we'll go ahead and fix that. We'll also fix this poorly trimmed surface so we can kind of see the surface underneath. There's quite a big overlap here. The same situation happens on the inside of my part where I've got a couple spots where the surface came in bad during translation. And we also have on the inside of my part a few locations where we perhaps want to keep the tool from dipping into these openings to avoid any type of toolpath chatter. So we'll go ahead and create some surfaces to fix that. So in PowerMill, we can create surfaces. One method is to use a boundary. The other is to use a whole feature set. But if I use a boundary and go into the model tab, I can create a projected surface like so. But anything that's got any type of curvature or any complexity to it, we have to bring the data into our modeling companion, PowerMill Modeling. So I'm going to go ahead and select all the surfaces that reside in this mold, right click, and we're going to bring everything into surface modeling. So you notice that PowerMill is asking if we want to start power shape. If I didn't have modeling open, it would automatically open it up. In this case, I already do have it open. So we should see everything kind of translate over fairly quickly. And PowerMill modeling is a descendant of PowerShape itself. The difference is in PowerMill modeling, we can only work with wireframe and surface data. This little floating toolbar allows me to accept any changes I made to the model back into PowerMill, or basically exit back into PowerMill without any of the changes. So one thing I normally do is come down here and open up my levels toolbar and my viewing toolbar. And I'm going to just show all the edges. All right, so getting started here, let's go ahead and create a surface that fills this section in. So there's a few different methods I could use. In this case, I'm just going to go up to wireframe, create a comp curve, like so. I'm going to reverse the direction. I'm going to jump the gap. carry on in this direction, and let's fast forward. So I'm going to save that curve, and then I'm going to go into the Surface tab and use the Smart Surfacer. So you can see how it tries to create that nice planar flat surface. There is a little bit of a wrinkle to it, so let's remove the tangencies, and I'm going to apply. So same situation on the other side. I can go ahead and create a comp curve, fill that gap in. This time what I'm going to do is jump into the manufacturer group within the Surface tab, and I'm going to use this function. But before we use that function, we have to physically select either a solid or some surfaces. So let's go ahead and select that surface and fill that edge. So I'm going to select this edge to start it off, and that point there to close it, and we'll apply. So pretty simple. So let's go ahead and look at the surface that was missing during translation. We're going to go ahead and use the Smart Surfacer. This time I'm not really going to draw anything. All I'm going to do is use the edges that already exist here. So this edge here, PowerMill Modelling is going to try to create a surface best suited for what I've given it. If I hold the Shift button down and select the opposing side, it'll fill that gap in. And okay. Now before we move on to anything else, I might want to color code these surfaces to the same as what surrounds. So I'm going to select this surface, go to the Home tab, paste the attributes onto this surface, and that surface. Okay, let's go ahead and look at the surface that was poorly trimmed. So in the editing tool, we can use these limiting tools to either limit wireframe or surfaces. This selection here is for trimming. So it needs a cutting object. So I may be able to use a surface as my cutting object. In this case, modeling doesn't allow me to use that surface. So what I'm going to do is revert to using a curve, like so. Let's go ahead and save it. Go back to edit, same selection function. The curve has been accepted as a cutting object, and we're going to trim that away. Let's do the same thing over here. I'm going to go to wireframe. I'm going to create a comp curve, like so. I'm going to go ahead and save that. Trimming function, and we'll trim it away. And one last example. Let's go back to wireframe, comp curve, or Control H will raise the comp curve creator. Save. And we'll trim it away. Okay. Normally, when I start creating a bunch of geometry, if I don't want to bring these back into PowerMill, when I accept all the changes, I'm going to go back to the Home tab, select all wireframe, and delete. And just to make sure we're selecting the appropriate edges, so since I've got, a wall down here, I also have edges on this surface. If I start creating curves or if I start extracting surface information, I could select two different edges. So normally if I'm going to be working on these surfaces, I'm just going to show only these surfaces. So I'm going to select them, go to the View tab, blank accept. So basically I'm going to keep these surfaces shown, everything else is kind of hidden. I'm going to go to the Smart Surfacer, Control T erases that form. I'm going to select this edge, and PowerMill will fill that gap in with a fill-in surface and tangential to the surrounding surfaces automatically. So I'm going to hit apply. I'm going to do the same thing over here. Hit apply. This time I'm going to create a comp curve to fill in this section. I try to keep my surfaces to a 3 or 4 sided surface. I'm going to jump the gap. And PowerMill Modeling is going to give me different options here. So I'm going to use the fill in method and apply. So the surfaces don't need to be perfect. We're just creating these to keep the tool out. We're not really modifying the existing geometry. So I can use that same tool that I used when I created that fill-in surface on the fillet. I'm going to select this edge, and apply. Create a comp curve directly from the Smart Surfacer. Save it. And you'll notice that modeling is using a from network style. You can see how it kind of really pulls in. I can turn off the tangency or maybe even try a different surface type and apply. Okay, for these 3 remaining openings, I'm just going to go ahead and create some comp curves ahead of time. Save, and we'll save this one as well. Control T opens up the Smart Surfacer. I'm going to hit apply, select the next one, hit apply, and finally the last one down at the bottom, and apply. Okay, so what we're going to do is, again, color code these to the same as the surrounding surfaces. So let's select this surface, paste the attributes onto these surfaces. Like so. And we'll close out of that function. And again, I'm not bringing these curves back with me, so go back to the Home tab, select all wireframe, and delete. And I might want to put these on a separate level, so when I bring everything back into PowerMill, I can turn these off and on, or select them. So I'm going to bring my mouse into this field, type in a value. In this case, I'm going to create level 10, and I'm going to name these part cap surfaces. And I'm going to select them all. So holding the shift button down, just going to go through and manually select them. And place them into that level using my center mouse button. So now these are on their own separate level. Bring all the surfaces back, unblank them. I'm going to do the same thing with these 2 surfaces that we created here originally. So let's go ahead and create another level. Let's call these slot surface covers. I'm going to select that surface, and then center mouse button to add them in. Okay, so let's look at maybe creating some runoff surfaces on the outside of this part. So there's a few different ways I could do this. Again, I suggest that you either, if I'm going to create curves, if I'm creating them off of these green surfaces, then just mask or hide the surrounding surfaces, because when you create the curve is taking information from the surrounding surfaces. So I'm just going to blank those. Let's go ahead and Control H, bring up the comp curve. Now, I'm just going to use these markers to start at that point, finish at this point, start my curve, fast forward it. Let's go ahead and save that. So one method we could use is the extrude function underneath surface. Okay, so with extrude, I can use this slider to dictate how far out I want the extruded surface to go. If I double click on it, I can actually open up the extrude editor, place a certain value in here, and I can reverse the surface. And OK. So that's one method. Doing all four sides is going to take me a little bit of time, but it's definitely a fail-safe method. So what I'm going to do is show you a different method. Let's undo this, including the curve. So I'm going to create a new curve, start on this edge. I'm going to fast forward it. I'm going to make sure that my curve jumps the gap here like it did before on both sides. Curve looks good. Let's go ahead and save this. Close out of the form. And let's go back into the surfacing tab and just use the extend function. So the reason why I hit everything is because I want to use the normals of this curve on how I extracted it. I'm going to use all the default method, do a nice preview. Gives me a pretty nice surface all the way around. Go ahead and hit apply, and let's cancel that. So again, before I go into PowerMill, maybe I create a new level. Let's call this runoff. I'm going to select it and add it to that level. Okay, so let's go ahead and select all the wireframe again and delete. And then let's unblank everything. All right, so one last thing what I might do before I bring everything back into PowerMill is I might just want to find out what the angles are on these surfaces, or maybe this fillet radius. So there's some nice interrogation tools in modeling that don't exist in PowerMill. So if I go into the visualization tab, this surface inspection button here allows me to basically find out any information on that surface. We do have to select that surface first. So let's go ahead and select this surface, surface inspection. Then I'm going to hold the left mouse button down on that surface, and it's going to give me a draft angle of -83 or 7 degrees. Hovering it on this radius gives me a radius of roughly 280 and 780 here. So it's a nice interactive tool to find out some information on those surfaces. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and accept this and bring it back into PowerMill itself. So green check brings everything back into PowerMill with the accepted changes. You can see all the levels transpire, so I can turn these off if I need to. Now, if I need to update my toolpaths, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my clearance toolpath and my part toolpath. I'm going to invalidate these two, and let's go ahead and recalculate them. Okay, so if we look at the clearance toolpath, we can see now those two spots where the tool is dipping in, transitions over those gaps nicely. And we can also see in the part finish toolpath, we get the same behavior, especially on these small little openings where the tool could kind of dip in there and perhaps cause damage to the tool. So I'd like to thank you all for attending today. I hope you get a good feel as to how PowerMill modeling can help you with your general PowerMill workflow. I'll hang out here for a little bit. If you have any questions, feel free to ask away. Thank you very much.